It's a pleasure to be back here, and couldn't be prouder of this committee on both sides of the aisle, and particularly this chairman, but also your agency. We really do appreciate you being there in really difficult times and helping us understand what happened and making sure it doesn't happen again. Toward that end, and you touched on some of this in your testimony, and I know we don't have a final report yet on the Francis Scott Key Bridge incident, but I think you released recently that there were a couple of electrical outages on the dolly as it approached the bridge, and I'm curious if you can tell us at this point, number one, how did you detect that? Just out of curiosity for myself, but is this common on vessels like this, or was this a sign perhaps of negligence on the part of the crew?
That's part of our investigation that we are still looking into. There were 2 electrical outages, and then there were electrical outages the day before. We determined those were unrelated and announced that in our preliminary report, as the day before it was due to planned maintenance. And that is not something that they would underway in transit. But the electrical outages themselves we're still looking into. That is part of our investigation. I do want to thank some of our partners at Hyundai for coming to help us. We got down to the subcomponent level, and were on the dolly for about a month with our team. So that does continue. And then we also have the bridge team focused on the bridge itself and safety.
Is there anything about the bridge you can tell us at this point?
So for the bridge itself, while it passed annual inspections, which really focus on the condition of the bridge, what we did is AASHTO, the State Highway Transportation officials, recommended in 1991 and again in 2009 that bridge owners conduct a vulnerability assessment of their bridges to determine if there's risk and to evaluate that risk and take action if warranted. That did not occur for the Francis Scott Key Bridge, and so we had asked MDTA if they had done the vulnerability assessment. They had not done it, and we looked for data for that vulnerability assessment. They didn't have the data, so we had to get the data over the course of, it usually takes about a year to do these vulnerability assessments. We did it in 6 months. We got a ton of data and then ran the calculations, and what we found was that the bridge was almost 30 times greater than the risk threshold that AASHTO sets for critical bridges. And the Pier 17, which was struck by the dolly, was almost 15 times greater. So we recommended, as a result of that 30 bridge owners of 68 bridges conduct a vulnerability assessment to determine risk, and if warranted, take immediate action.
Thank you very much for that. Let me turn quickly. We've obviously had some incidents in our air travel that are concerning to all of us. And you've made several recommendations over the past decade, frankly, regarding aviation safety management system, or SMS. While the FAA, I'm told, has implemented requirements for major airlines, we continue to see delays in extending some of these requirements to other aviation sectors, including manufacturers, maintenance facilities, smaller operations. But which of your specific recommendations do you think would be most important to apply across the board to ensure the maximum safety for the flying public?
Well, for SMS in particular, which you stated, we have recommendations on SMS across all modes of transportation, but in aviation in particular, the focus has been on commercial aviation, and the commercial airlines have had SMS since 2015, but it's been a very piecemeal approach across the aviation industry. For aviation manufacturers, there was a final rule issued in May of 2024, and that doesn't go into effect until 2027. So Boeing, for example, is in the early stages of implementing that, but it's the very early stages. For other sectors, Part 135, that's the charter and air taxis, they began the process of SMS at FAA, but that hasn't been finalized. Maintenance facilities, there's no requirement for that. Part 91, which are the air tours, also do not have requirements for safety management systems. It should be one level of safety for passengers. That's what we believe. And the piecemeal approach isn't working.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.